Chapter 13 of He Can Who Thinks He Can by Orison Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Had money but lost it. A prominent New York lawyer of wide experience says that in his opinion 99 out of 100 of those who make money or inherit it lose it sooner or later. What a spectacle everywhere in this land of plenty, of inexhaustible resources and unlimited opportunity, where every man ought to be a king, to see God's noblemen living like European peasants because they never learned to do business in a business way. How many thousands of good, honest men and women are there in this country who have worked very hard and made all sorts of sacrifices of comfort and luxury in order to lay up something for the future, and yet have reached middle life or later without having anything to show for it? Many of them, indeed, finding themselves without a home or any probability of getting one, without property or a cent of money laid by for sickness, for the inevitable emergency, or for their declining years. It seems incredible that a strong, sturdy, self-made man, who has had to fight his way up from poverty, and who feels the backache in every dollar he has earned, should let his savings slip through his fingers in the most foolish investments, with scarcely any investigation, often sending his money thousands of miles away to people he has never seen, and about whom he knows practically nothing, except through an advertisement which has attracted his attention, or through the wiles of some smooth, unprincipled promoter. Great numbers of vast fortunes in this country have been and are being built up on the very ignorance of the masses in regard to business methods. The schemers bank on it that it is easy to swindle people who do not know how to protect their property. They thrive on the ignorance of their fellows. They know that a shrewd advertisement, a cunningly worded circular, a hypnotic appeal will bring the hard earnings of those unsuspecting people out of hiding places into their own coffers. For the sake of your home, for the protection of your hard earnings, for your peace of mind, your self-respect, your self-confidence, whatever else you do, do not neglect a good solid business training, and get it as early in life as possible. It will save you from many a fall, from 1,000 embarrassments, and perhaps from the humiliation of being compelled to face your wife and children and confess you have been a failure. It may spare you the mortification of having to move from a good home to a poor one, of seeing your property slip out of your hands, and of having to acknowledge your weakness and your lack of foresight and thoughtfulness, or it may prevent your being made the dupe of sharpers. Many men who had once had good stores of their own are working as clerks, floor walkers, or superintendents in departments of other people's stores, just because they risked and lost everything in some venture. As they now have others depending on them, they do not dare to take the risks they took in young manhood to get a new start, and so they struggle along in mediocre positions, still mocked with ambitions which they have no chance to gratify. How many inventors and discoverers have fought the fight of desperation amidst poverty and deprivation for years and years, and have succeeded in giving the world that which helps to emancipate man from drudgery, and to ameliorate the hard conditions of civilization, and yet have allowed others to snatch their victories away from them and leave them penniless just because they did not know how to protect themselves. Thousands of people who were once in easy circumstances are living in poverty and wretchedness today because they failed to put an understanding or an agreement in writing, or to do business in a business way. Families have been turned penniless out of house and home because they trusted to a relative or a friend to do what was right by them, without making a hard and fast practical business arrangement with him. It does not matter how honest people are, they may forget, and it is so easy for misunderstandings to arise that it is never safe to leave anything of importance to a mere oral statement. Reduce it to writing. It costs but little in time or money, and when all parties interested are agreed, that is the best time to formulate the agreement in exact terms. This will often save lawsuits, bitterness, and alienations. How many friendships have been broken because understandings were not put in writing? Thousands of cases are in the courts today for this reason, and a large part of lawyers' incomes is derived from them. Many people have a foolish idea that others, especially friends or relatives, will be sensitive and think their honesty questioned if they are asked to put their proposition or agreement or understanding in writing. It is not a question of confidence. It is a question of business, and business should be done in a business way, so that in case of death or some other unforeseen event, every possibility of complication or misunderstanding will be eliminated. The very people you may think will be sensitive or offended because you are so exacting will really think more of you for your straightforward business methods and your carefulness in avoiding misunderstanding. Many a cultured girl has been thrown suddenly on her own resources by the failure or the death of her father, and has found herself wholly incapable of administering his affairs or of earning a living. Many women, their husbands having died suddenly, are left with large business responsibilities which they are utterly unfit to assume. They are at the mercy of designing lawyers or dishonest business men, who know well that they are mere babes in their hands when it comes to important transactions. Business talent is as rare as a talent for mathematics. We find boys and girls turned out of school and college full of theories, and all sorts of knowledge or smatterings of knowledge, but without the ability to protect themselves from human thieves who are trying to get something for nothing. No girl or boy should be allowed to graduate, especially from any of the higher institutions, without being well grounded in practical business methods. Parents who send their children out in life, without seeing that they are well versed in ordinary business principles, do them an incalculable injustice. I have heard a young woman boast that she did not know anything about money matters and had no desire to. She said that she had no idea of the value of a dollar, that she could spend all the money she could get, but that it was distasteful to her to discuss economy. Many such women object to any common sense consideration of the financial question. They think it is not necessary for them to know anything about money from the purely business point of view, as they consider that phase of life belongs wholly to their fathers or brothers or husbands. An instructive example of the result of such spirit and ignorance I found in a lady who had lost her property through a lack of business knowledge. She told me that she knew nothing whatever about business. She had never known the value of money. Her husband died and left her with a large property, and it was her custom to sign any paper or document that her lawyer or agents presented to her, usually without reading. The people who had charge of her property knew that she knew nothing about business and took advantage of her ignorance. They got her property away from her, and she did not have enough left even to conduct a legal fight to get it back. Thousands of girls are sent out into the world with what is called finished educations, who cannot even give a proper receipt for money, to say nothing of drawing a promissory note, a draft, or a bill, or understanding the significance and importance of business contracts. Such a woman presented a check for payment to the paying teller of her bank. He passed it back to her with a request that she be kind enough to endorse it. The lady wrote on the back of the check, "I have done business with this bank for many years, and I believe it to be all right. Mrs. James B. Brown." A society woman in New York presented a check for payment at a bank, and the teller told her that it was not signed. "Oh, do they have to be signed?" she responded. "What an awful lot of red tape there is about the banking business." I know of a lady whose husband made a deposit for her in a bank and gave her a checkbook so that she could pay her bills without calling on him for money. One day she received a notice from the bank that her account was overdrawn. She went to the bank and told the teller that there must be a mistake about it, because she still had a lot of checks left in her book. She knew so little about business methods that she thought she could keep drawing any amount until the checks were all gone. This sounds ridiculous and almost incredible, yet the very girl who laughs at it may make even more absurd blunders. Many an accomplished woman, when given a pen and asked to sign an important document drawn up by an attorney or a long-headed business man, will sign it without reading it or even asking to be informed of its contents, only to learn afterward, by disastrous results, that she has signed away her property and turned herself out of her home. Only a short time ago I read of a lady who had won a suit involving about $20,000. New evidence, however, was brought forward, which caused the court immediately to reverse its decision. It was proved that the lady had sworn falsely. She was perfectly innocent of any such intention, but she had sworn that she had never signed her name to a certain document. The document was produced, and to her utter astonishment, she saw her signature affixed to it. She acknowledged at once that the signature was hers, although she had just sworn that she had never signed the paper in question. It appeared that, during her husband's lifetime, whenever papers were to be signed, he told her where to write her name, and she did as she was told, without having the slightest idea of the contents of the papers. Many people come to grief by giving full power of attorney to their lawyer or business agent. Very few impractical people, especially women, understand the significance of a full power of attorney, which authorizes the person so empowered to deal with your property in all respects as if it were his own, or as if he had for the time being assumed your personality. He may sign your name to any instrument. He may bind you to anything he pleases. He may draw money from your bank. He may impersonate you in all business transactions. In short, as far as business arrangements are concerned, he stands practically and legally for yourself. It is a tremendous power to place in the hands of another, and people should be very careful to whom they assign it. It should never be conferred on any person but one whose honesty is above suspicion, and whose knowledge of business and of men and affairs has been tried and proved. "Oh, I signed a paper giving full power of attorney to my lawyer before I went abroad. I trusted everything to him, and when I came back practically everything was gone. My business affairs were so complicated that I have not had the money to fight the man I trusted." This was, in brief, the story of one man's wrecked finances as he told it to me. Women will often pay out large sums of money and never think of asking for a receipt, especially if they are dealing with friends or people they know well. Intelligent women, however, ought to know that our government is a good example of how we should do business. It does not doubt President Roosevelt's honesty, and yet he must sign a voucher for his salary, just the same as the cheapest government employee. The justices of the United States Supreme Court, who are considered to be the soul of honor, and are the final arbiters of all great questions, must also sign a receipt for their salaries. If every child in America had a thorough business training, tens of thousands of promoters, long-headed, cunning schemers, who have thriven on the people's ignorance, would be out of an occupation. I believe that the business colleges are among the greatest blessings in American civilization today, because through their teaching they have been the means of saving thousands of homes, and have made happy and comfortable tens of thousands of people who might otherwise be living in poverty and wretchedness. This ignorance of practical business principles is very common among professional men. I know clergymen, journalists, authors, doctors, teachers, men in every profession, who are constantly subjected to serious embarrassment by their incapacity in business matters. Some of them do not know how to interpret the simplest business forms. Not long ago, a Harvard graduate, occupying a very important position as a teacher, went to the president of a commercial school and asked to give him some lessons on how to handle money, notes, etc. He said that when he went to his bank and asked them how much money he had there, they laughed at him, and that when the bank draft came to him, he did not know what to do with it. Nothing will stand you in better stead, in the hard, cold, practical, everyday world, than a good, sound business education. You will find that your success in any trade, occupation, or profession will depend as much on your general knowledge of men and affairs as on your technical training. No matter what your vocation may be, you must be a businessman first, or you will always be placed at a great disadvantage in the practical affairs of life. We cannot entirely ignore the money side of existence any more than we can the food side, and the very foundation of a practical, successful life is the ability to know how to manage the money side effectively. It is infinitely harder to save money and to invest it wisely than it is to make it. And if, even the most practical men who have had a long training in scientific business methods, find it a difficult thing to hold on to money after they make it, what is likely to happen to people who have no practical training in business methods? End of chapter 13. Chapter 14 of He Can Who Thinks He Can, by Orison Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Sizing Up People. After Alexander the Great had conquered the Persians, he became suddenly very ill. One of his generals sent him a letter saying that his attending physician had resolved to poison him. He read the letter without the slightest sign of emotion and put it under his pillow. When the physician came and prepared medicine, Alexander said he would not take it just then, but told him to put it where he could reach it, and at the same time gave him the letter from his general. Alexander raised himself on his elbow and watched the physician's face with the most searching scrutiny, looking into his very soul, but he did not see in it the slightest evidence of fear or guilt. He immediately reached for the medicine bottle, and without a word drank its contents. The amazed physician asked him how he could do that after receiving such a letter. Alexander replied, "Because you are an honest man." Alexander was a remarkable student of human nature. He knew men and the motives which actuated them. He could read the human heart as an open book. The art of all arts for the leader is this ability to measure men, to weigh them, to size them up, to estimate their possibilities, to place them so as to call out their strength and eliminate their weakness. This is the epitaph which Andrew Carnegie has chosen for himself. "Here lies a man who knew how to get around him men much cleverer than himself." People wonder how a Morgan, a Harriman, a Ryan, a Wanamaker can carry on such prodigious enterprises. The secret lies in their ability to project themselves through a mighty system, and to choose men who will fit the places they are put in, men who can carry out their employer's program to the letter. Marshall Field was always studying his employees and trying to read their futures. Nothing escaped his keen eye. Even when those about him did not know what he was thinking of them, he was taking their measure at every opportunity. His ability to place men, to weigh and measure them, to pierce all pretense, amounted to genius. When he missed a man from a certain counter, he would often ask his manager what had become of him. When told that he was promoted, he would keep track of him until he missed him again, and then would ask where he was. He always wanted to see how near the man came to his estimate of him. He thus kept track of men of promise in his employ and watched their advancement. In this way he became an expert in human nature reading. Mr. Field would sometimes pick out a man for a position the choice of whom his advisers would tell him they thought was a mistake. But he was nearly always right, because he had a greater power of discernment than the others. He did not pay much attention to the claims of the applicant, or to what he said, because he could see through the surface and measure the real man. He had a wonderful power for taking a man's mental caliber. He could see in which direction his strength lay, and he could see his weak points as few men could. A man who had been his general manager for many years once resigned very suddenly to go into business for himself. Without the slightest hesitation or concern, Mr. Field called to his office a man whom he had been watching, unknown to the man, for a long time. With very few words he made him general manager, and so great was his confidence that he had measured the man correctly that the very next day he sailed for Europe. He did not think it necessary to wait and see how this new manager turned out. He believed he had the right man and that he could trust him. He was not disappointed. Men who are capable of succeeding in a large way are shrewd enough to know that they do not know it all, shrewd enough to employ men who are strong where they are weak, to surround themselves with men who have the ability which they lack, who can supplement their weakness and shortcomings with strength and ability. Thus, in their combined power, they make an effective force. Many men, because of their inability to read human nature, duplicate their own weaknesses in their employees, thus multiplying their chances of failure. Few men are able to see their own weaknesses and limitations, and those who do not, surround themselves with men who have the same weak links in their character, and the result is that their whole institution is weak. A leader must not only be able to judge others, but he must also be able to read himself, to take an inventory of his own strong points and weak points. Men who have been elected to high office or to fill very important positions at the head of great concerns because of their recognized ability have often disappointed the expectation of those who placed their hopes in them, simply because they could not read people. They may have been well educated, well posted, strong intellectually, may have had a great deal of general ability, but they lacked the skill to read men, to measure them, to weigh them, to place them where they belonged. Grant was cut out for a general, a military leader, but when he got into the White House he felt out of place. He was shorn of his great power. He could not use his greatest ability. He was obliged to depend too much upon the advice of friends. The result was that, as president, he did not maintain the high reputation he had made as a general. If he had had the same ability to read politicians and to estimate men for government positions that he had for judging of military ability, he would have made a great president. But he felt his weakness in the position which he was not fitted by nature to fill, and made the fatal mistake of putting himself into the hands of his friends. The young man starting out for himself ought to make a study of his power of penetration, of his character reading ability. He ought to make it a business to study men, to estimate their capabilities and the motives which actuate them. He should scrutinize their actions, watch their tendencies in little things, and learn to read them as an open book. The involuntary acts and natural manner of a man indicate more than does his studied conversation. The eye cannot lie. It speaks the truth in all languages. It often contradicts the tongue. While the man is trying to deceive you with words, his eyes are telling you the truth. His actions are indicative of the real man, while the tongue may only represent the diplomat, the man who is acting. A very successful business man in New York, noted for his ability to read men, will sometimes study an applicant for an important position for a long time, talking very little himself, but all the time trying to call the man out, watching every moment, scrutinizing every word, trying to read the motive behind every glance of the eye. His manner, everything, are all letters of the alphabet by which he spells out the real man. I have been in his office when he was measuring a man. It was a great lesson to watch his face as he seemed to read the applicant through and through, weigh him on the scale of his judgment, penetrate to the very marrow of his being, and estimate his capabilities and possibilities to a nicety. After a few minutes' conversation, and the man had passed out, he would tell me just how large that man was, what he was capable of doing, what his future would be, and what were his limitations. And he seldom makes a mistake. I have never known a man to succeed to any extent when he said there was nothing in him, and I have never known one to turn out badly when he endorsed him without reserve. We all know heads of business houses who work like slaves, dig and save, and yet do not make much headway, simply because they do not know how to surround themselves with the right men. Some men seem incapable of projecting system and order through their establishments. They may do their own work well, and then they strike their limitations. They are not good judges of human nature. Their discernment is not sharp. They are misled by conversational powers, display of education, and often place a theoretical man where only practical talent could succeed. They are likely to place a man of great refinement, sensitiveness, delicate make-up, in a position where a strong, robust, thick-skinned man is required, where an oversensitive soul will chafe and shrink from the cold, aggressive business methods necessary to effective, efficient management. People are continually being led into all sorts of unfortunate positions, entangling alliances and mortifying, embarrassing situations, because of their lack of ability to read human nature and to estimate character at a glance. Good people everywhere are being imposed upon and are losing their money in all sorts of foolish investments because of their ignorance of human nature. They are not able to see the rascal, the scoundrel behind the mask. They have not developed the power of discernment, the ability to see the wolf in sheep's clothing. The knowledge of human nature as a protector of money, of character, as a protector against frauds and imposition is inestimable. Gullible people are proverbial poor readers of human nature, and hence they are always open to imposition. Oily, cunning promoters are keen observers of human nature, and they can tell very quickly when they strike a good-natured, large-hearted professor, scholar, clergyman, or artist, who knows very little about business matters and who trusts everybody. They know that if they can only get an opportunity, they can very quickly make such a man believe almost anything. They know he will be an easy prey to their wiles and their keener knowledge of men. These promoters would not think of tackling a shrewd, level-headed businessman for their nefarious schemes, because he is too keen, too sharp, too good a judge of human nature. Such a man would be likely to penetrate the mask and see the real motive beneath the oily, honeyed words, the smooth, seductive manner. The ability to read people at sight is a great business asset. Expertness in reading human nature is just as valuable to a young lawyer as a knowledge of law. It is as valuable to a physician as a knowledge of medicine. The man who can read human nature, who can size up a person quickly, who can arrive at an accurate estimate of character, no matter what his vocation or profession, has a great advantage over others. With some men the power to read people aright amounts to an instinct. They look through all pretenses. They tear off all masks. They see the man as he is, his reality, and measure him for what he is worth. A man possessing this power of character reading pays little attention to what a person seeking employment may say of himself. He can see for himself. Human nature is to him an open book, while to others it is a sealed book. They do not have the faculty of going back of pretensions. They are largely at the mercy of what he claims for himself, and they are always being duped. They make very poor employers. I know a popular businessman, a very able man in many respects, and one much beloved by everybody who knows him, but he has always been the victim of his ignorance of human nature. He cannot read motives, weigh or estimate the ability of others to do certain things. If an applicant for a position talks well, he immediately jumps to the conclusion that he is a good man for the position, and hires him, usually to be disappointed. He has a great weakness for clergymen who have lost their positions through failing health or for other reasons, and also for ex-teachers and professors. The result is that he has a lot of impractical people about him, who know nothing of progressive, scientific business building. It is an education in itself to form the habit of measuring, weighing, estimating the different people we meet, for in this way we are improving our own powers of observation, sharpening our perceptive faculties, improving our judgment. The ability to read human nature is a cultivable quality, and we have a great opportunity in this country, with its conglomerate population, to study the various types of character. What a wonderful school most of us are in practically all of the time, especially in large cities, where we are constantly coming in contact with strangers. What a chance to become experts in reading human nature, in studying motives. The face, the eye, the manners, the gestures, the walk, all these are hieroglyphics which, if we can only decipher them, spell out the character. Sometimes a single glance of the eye, when one is unconscious, will give you a glimpse into his innermost soul and reveal secrets which he would never dare to utter with his tongue. The facial expression and the manner, especially when people are off their guard, or unconscious that they are being watched, are great revealers of character. You will find, as you become an expert in face study, in reading character, human nature, that you will develop marvelous skill in seeing things which you never noticed before. You will be able to protect yourself from the promoter, the insinuating man who is trying to persuade you into something which may not be to your benefit, but which will be to his. You will be able to discriminate between friendship and duplicity. You will be able to protect yourself from 1,000 annoyances and embarrassments and humiliations which might cripple your career. How many people are living in poverty, are wretched, homeless today because they could not read human nature and were robbed of their property and their rights. To discern the difference between the false and the true, to place the right values upon men, to emphasize the right thing in them, to discriminate between the genuine and the pretended, is an accomplishment which may be worth infinitely more to you than a college education without this practical power, and may make all the difference to you between success and failure, happiness and misery. End of chapter 14. Chapter 15 of He Can Who Thinks He Can, by Orison Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Does the world owe you a living? A 15-year-old bellboy was arrested in Cleveland for stealing $8. When asked in court why he stole, he said, "Because the world owes me a living." No doubt the youth had heard this many times from older lips. When the armies of Louis XV were devastated in Flanders, the monarch exclaimed, "Has God forgotten all that I have done for him?" A vast number of people seem to think that God and the world are under great obligation to them, and that the world owes them a living without any return service from them. Not long ago I heard a young woman say that she did not consider that she owed the world anything, that she was thrust into it without being consulted, that she proposed to get out of it what she could with as little effort as possible, and that she did not feel under the slightest obligation to the past. Did you ever think, my idle friend, what you really owe the world for the privilege of living in it? Did you ever think that all the civilizations of the globe have been working for you through all the ages up to the present moment, and that you are reaping the harvest of all the hard working, sacrificing, suffering, drudging sowers that have preceded you? Can you look the workers of the world in the face and tell them that you intend to have all the benefits of their labor, to enjoy all the good things of the world without doing anything to compensate for them? The man who does not feel his heart throb with gratitude every day of his life for being born in the very golden age of the world, and who does not feel that he owes a tremendous debt to the past, to all the people who have struggled and striven and sacrificed before him, is not made of the right kind of stuff. In other words, he is not a man, and he ought to be treated as a drone, a thief of other men's labors. Everything that has gone before you enters into your life and time. You enjoy the sum of all the past every moment of your life. Think of the untold thousands who have laid down their lives to make possible the comforts, the blessings, and the immunities you now enjoy. Think of the rivers of blood that have been spilt, of the thousands who have perished or lived in the misery of prison and dungeon to purchase the liberties of speech and freedom of action which you enjoy today. How many lives have been lived in solitude and misery in order to develop sciences which are today beacon lights of the world? And think what multitudes of people are engaged in producing, manufacturing, and forwarding your clothing, your furniture, your food, the tropical fruits on your table, the foreign textiles, the bric-a-brac, and all the things which come from foreign lands to minister to your comfort and convenience. You buy an orange on the street for 2 or 3 cents, but did you ever think of what it had cost to bring it to you? Did you ever think of the number of people who have aided in its production and its transportation so that you might buy it for a few pennies? You get a yard of cotton for 10 cents, but did you ever think of the toil and hardships of the people in the South, of the operatives in the mill, the packers, shippers, and clerks who have handled and rehandled and shipped it by steamship and railroad that you might buy it for a song? Suppose these people who say that they owe the world nothing were obliged to make all the comforts and luxuries they enjoy. How long would it take them to produce even a lead pencil, a sheet of writing paper, a jackknife, a pair of spectacles, a pair of shoes, or a suit of clothes, representing an untold amount of drudgery and sacrifice? There is toil, struggle, and sacrifice in everything you purchase, everything you enjoy. How many thousands of people have worked like slaves to make it even possible for you to ride on a railroad or on a steamship? And how many lives have been sacrificed in order to reach the perfection and safety attained by modern trains and steamers, and to enable you to enjoy the comforts and luxuries which they provide? Wherever you go, tens of thousands of people have been preparing the way and getting things ready, guarding against danger, saving you trouble and drudgery, and yet you say that you do not consider yourself in debt to the world. If all the workers and all the wealth of the world today had been employed for thousands of years for your special benefit, to prepare for your reception upon the earth, they could not have provided the comforts, the conveniences, the facilities, the immunities, the luxuries which you found waiting for you when you were born, and for which you gave not even a penny or a thought. And yet you say that the world owes you this and the other, and that you owe it nothing. Did you ever think, my idle friend, that there are some things which are not purchasable with money? Do not deceive yourself by thinking that you will get something for nothing. All the laws of the universe are fighting such a theory. You must open an account with the world personally. No one else can pay the debt you owe. Whatever money or advantages your father or anyone else gets by his own efforts nature has stamped untransferable. The law of the universe recognizes only one legal tender, and that is personal service. Whatever you get of real value you must pay for. The things that are done for you are delusions. You are a personal debtor to the world. When you were born, civilization opened an account with you. On one side of the ledger you find John Smith, debtor to all the past ages for the sum total of the results of the toil of the men and women who have lived and toiled before him, debtor to the privations, the sufferings, and the sacrifices of those who have bought freedom from bondage, immunity from slavery, emancipation from drudgery. You are debtor to all the inventions that have ameliorated the hard conditions of mankind and which have emancipated you from the same hard drudgery and stern conditions, the same narrow, limited life of your prehistoric ancestors. Who are you, Mr. Idler, that you claim a living from the world, when you have not earned the clothing you have on your back or the shelter which covers your head? Why should tens of thousands of people drudge and endure hardships and privations to produce all of the useful things, the beautiful things, the luxuries for you to enjoy without effort? You say the world owes you a living. What if the sheep should refuse to furnish its wool to cover your lazy back? The earth refuse to produce crops to fill your lazy stomach? The army of laborers refuse to let you take all the good things out of the world's great granary without putting anything back? What would become of you who have never lifted a finger to learn a trade, or to prepare yourself for a career, or to do work of any kind, if an edict were to come from the skies that would force you henceforth to do your share of the world's work or starve? Is he not a thief, an enemy of civilization who thrusts his arm into the great world storehouse, pulling out all the good things he wishes, and refusing to put anything back in exchange? We hear a great deal about indiscriminate giving making paupers, but what shall we say about the giving of fortunes to youth who have never been taught that they should give anything in return for all they receive? What are the chances of growth in character, in sturdy manhood, for the boy who knows that a fortune is waiting for him when he is 21, and who is told every day that his father is rich and that he is a fool to work, that he should just make a business of having a good time? What are the chances of his developing a rugged, sturdy independence, resourcefulness, originality, inventiveness, and all the other qualities that make for vigorous manhood? It is cruel, little less than criminal, to leave vast fortunes to youth without stamina of character, a superb, practical training, or the experience or wisdom to use them wisely. Things are so arranged in this world that happiness as a profession must ever be a failure. It cannot be found by seeking. It is reflex action. It is incidental, a product which comes from doing noble things. It is impossible for a person to be really happy by making pleasure a profession. No idle life can produce a real man. A life of luxury calls out only the effeminate, destructive qualities. The creative forces are developed only by stern endeavor to better one's condition in the world. No wealth or efforts of the parents can bring the latent energies out in the son which make for sturdy manhood. He must work out his problem himself. It can never be done for him. How little Harry Thaw's parents realized the cruelty of bringing their son up in idleness, without a trade or profession, helpless to earn his own living in case of necessity. One would think they would have learned wisdom from the tens of thousands of lessons which ruined lives have taught, that there is no getting around God's fiat, no evading the law, that work, exercise of faculty, self-effort are the only things that will develop a real man. The Creator has put an enormous penalty upon idleness, the penalty of weakness, of deterioration, of destruction, of annihilation. Use or lose is nature's edict. The idle man is like an idle machine. It destroys itself very quickly. A score of enemies are in readiness to attack anything as soon as it is at rest. Rust, decay, and all sorts of disintegrating processes start in a man just as soon as he becomes idle. Self-destruction begins in the mind the moment it ceases to work. There is no power in heaven or on earth that can save an idle brain from deterioration, no power that can make a man strong and vigorous unless he obeys the natural laws of his life, written in his very constitution. Work, steady, persistent, with a purpose, with zeal, with enthusiasm, with a love for it, is the only thing that can save a man from the disgrace of being a nobody. Work is the inexorable law of growth. There is no getting away from it. The time will come when an able-bodied man who has the audacity, the presumption, to try to get all the good things out of the world and give nothing in return will be looked upon as a monstrosity, an enemy to civilization, and will be ostracized by all decent people. The youth who thinks he is going to go through this world on what somebody else has produced or done and still develop into the highest type of a man is attempting to fight against his Maker. The very laws of the universe have made it forever impossible. Leave this vast, living, complicated machine idle, if you will. Try to divert it to some other use. Try to make a pleasure machine out of it when it was intended for a work machine, but all nature protests. One of the most demoralizing features of our American civilization today is found in the influence of the idle rich. Great human drones, who refuse to work, but who demand the best products of other men's labor and brains. I have heard rich fathers boast that necessity was the spur which made men of them, which gave them the foresight, the stamina, the shrewdness, the creative power, the ability necessary to make and protect their fortune, and yet they turn right around and leave a fortune to a son which is likely to take away his energy, to take the spring out of his ambition, to rob him of the zest, the enthusiasm which can only come from the exercise of earnest, honest effort. No man is so rich, no matter how honestly he got his money, as to be able to confer immunity from work upon his offspring. The very nature of things, the eternal law of the universe has made it forever impossible for you to transfer the stamina, the vigorous manhood, the stability, the character, everything that is of real value which you have gained in your struggle to get on in the world, to your son or daughter. Your offspring owes a debt to civilization which goes back of the parent. It is a debt which can only be wiped out by the individual. It cannot be discharged by proxy. Personal effort is the condition of the child's development. It is the inevitable price of manhood. No, there are some things you rich fathers cannot do for your boy. There is a law of nature which prohibits it, an omnipotent principle which protests against it. If a phrenologist should examine the heads of the idle, grown-up sons of rich men, he would find very marked deficiencies, an underdevelopment of nearly all of the qualities which make strong men. He would usually find selfishness very largely developed, self-reliance, originality, inventiveness, resourcefulness, and all of the other qualities which are drawn out and strengthened only by self-help and the struggle to make one's way in the world, little developed. If he should compare them with the heads of their self-made fathers, he would find very marked inferiority, so marked that there would apparently be no relationship between the owners of the heads. The contrast would be as great as that between the hard, tough, firm fiber of the mountain oak and the fiber of soft, spongy sapling, which never struggled with the storm and tempest because sheltered by surrounding trees. How little the father realizes that it is one of the cruelest things he could do to his boy to practically rob him of the opportunity of making a real man of himself, of developing qualities which make strength, power, which build vigorous, stalwart manhood. There is something about the actual making of one's way in the world, of burning behind one all bridges which others have built, throwing away all crutches and refusing to lean, to be boosted, refusing all assistance and standing erect upon one's own feet, thinking his own thoughts, fighting his own battles, bringing out his own latent possibilities by actual exercise, bringing into action every bit of one's inventiveness, resourcefulness, ingenuity and originality, tact, that makes a man strong, vigorous and stalwart, which indicates that this is the normal life of a man, the only life which can develop the true man. The army of inefficients, the namby-pambies, the dressed-up nobodies, with soft hands and softer heads, who are expert only in saying silly nothings to silly women, or in the practice of some useless fad, the amount to nothings everywhere, ought to convince you that there is no way of getting something for nothing. If you will not do a man's work, if you will not pay a man's price for manhood, you will be only an apology for a man. Of course, you can live the life of the idle if you will. If you are the son of a foolish rich father, no one may be able to hinder you, but you must take the idler's reward. You must go through life branded with the shame, labeled with the weakness, marked with the deformities of idleness. You must pay the penalty of your choice and be a nobody. End of chapter 15. Chapter 16 of He Can Who Thinks He Can, by Orson Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. What has luck done for you? Fortune brings in some boats that are not steered. People may say what they will about there not being such a thing as luck or chance, but we must all admit there is such a thing. We must all concede that things over which a man has no control, unforeseen happenings or events with which he has had nothing to do and on which he had not calculated, often change the whole course of his career. Good position do not always come by merit, or as the result of one's own direct efforts. It is now a poor laboring man or washerwoman who falls heir to a fortune by the death of some relative, or again, it is a poor girl who is suddenly raised to wealth and what the world calls high position by marrying a man of rank or fortune. Every schoolboy knows that there is a great advantage in being in the right place in just the nick of time, and that being there is often a matter of chance. Men are constantly being moved up into positions which they did not get wholly by merit. Their elevation is due, perhaps, to a railroad accident, a stroke of paralysis, or the death of men in high places. We had a striking instance of this recently in the death of two presidents of the Long Island Railroad within a few months, which led to unexpected promotions. Everyone knows that men are constantly being put at the head of large concerns because of kinship with the owners of the business, when perhaps a score of those who are working in the establishments at the time are much better fitted to fill the positions. But after all, who will be foolish enough to say that man is the toy of chance, or that true success is the result of accident or fate? No, luck is not God's price for success, nor does he dicker with men. When we consider the few who owe fortune or position to accident or luck, in comparison with the masses who have to fight every inch of the way to their own loaves, what are they in reality but the exceptions to the rule that character, merit, not fate or luck, or any other bogey of the imagination, controls the destinies of men? The only luck that plays any great part in a man's life is that which inheres in a stout heart, a willing hand, and an alert brain. What has chance ever done in the world? Has it invented a telegraph or telephone? Has it laid an ocean cable? Has it built steamships or established universities, asylums, or hospitals? Has it tunneled mountains, built bridges, or brought miracles out of the soil? What did luck have to do with making the career of Washington, of Lincoln, of Daniel Webster, of Henry Clay, of Grant, of Garfield, or of Elihu Root? Did it help Edison or Marconi with his inventions? Did it have anything to do with the making of the fortunes of our great merchant princes? Do such men as John Wanamaker, Robert Ogden, or Marshall Field owe their success to luck? Many a man has tried to justify his failure on the ground that he was doomed by the cards which fate dealt him, that he must pick up and play the game, and that no effort, however great on his part, could materially change the result. But, my young friend, the fate that deals your cards is in the main your own resolution. The result of the game does not rest with fate or destiny, but with you. You will take the trick if you have the superior energy, ability, and determination requisite to take it. You have the power within yourself to change the value of the cards which you say fate has dealt you. The game depends upon your training, upon the way you are disciplined to seize and use your opportunities, and upon your ability to put grit in the place of superior advantages. Just because circumstances sometimes give clients to lawyers and patients to physicians, put commonplace clergymen in uncommon pulpits, and place the sons of the rich at the head of great corporations even when they only have average ability and scarcely any experience, while poor youths with greater ability and more experience often have to fight their way for years to obtain ordinary situations, are you justified in starting out without a chart or in leaving a place for luck in your program? What would you think of a captain of a great liner who would start out to sea without any port in view and trust to luck to land his precious cargo safely? Did you ever know of a strong young man making out his life program and depending upon chance to carry out any part of it? Men who depend upon luck do not think it worth while to make a thorough preparation for success. They are not willing to pay the regular price for it. They are looking for bargains. They are hunting for short cuts to success. We hear a great deal about Roosevelt's luck. But what would have it availed him if he was not ready for the opportunity when it came, if he had not trained himself through years of persistent drill to grasp it, if he had not been prepared to make the best use of it? I have never known a man to amount to much until he cut out of his vocabulary such words as good luck and bad luck, and from his life maxims all the I can't words and the I can't philosophy. There is no word in the English language more misused and abused than luck. More people have excused themselves for poor work and mean, stingy, poverty-stricken careers by saying luck was against them than by any other plea. That door ahead of you, young man, is probably closed because you have closed it by lack of training, by lack of ambition, energy, and push. While perhaps you have been waiting for luck to open it, a pluckier, grittier fellow has stepped in ahead of you and opened it himself. Power gravitates to the man who knows how. Luck is the tide, nothing more. The strong man rows with it if it makes toward his port. He rows against it if it flows the other way. When Governor John A. Johnson of Minnesota was asked, "How do you account for your success?" he answered simply, "I just tried to make good." You will find 999 times out of 1,000 that the man who tries to make good is the lucky man. Young Johnson had to fight against poverty, heredity, and environment, everything that could be put forward as an excuse for bad luck or no chance. Yet in his hard battle with fate he never once faltered or whined or complained that luck was against him. One of the most unfortunate delusions that ever found its way into a youth's brain is that there is some force or power outside of himself that will, in some mysterious way, and with very little effort on his part, lift him into a position of comfort and luxury. I never knew anyone who followed the ignis fatuus, luck, who did not follow it to his ruin. Good luck follows good sense, good judgment, good health, a gritty determination, a lofty ambition, and downright hard work. When you see horses in a race, you know perfectly well that the one in the lead is ahead because he has run faster than the others, and you would not have much sympathy for the horse behind it if he should bemoan his fate and declare that the horse ahead had a snap. When you see anyone doing better than you are doing under similar circumstances, just say to yourself, "There must be some reason for it. There is a secret back of it, and I must find it out." Do not try to ease your conscience or lull your ambition by pleading hard luck for yourself or good fortune for another. Napoleon said that God is always on the side of the strongest battalions. He is always on the side of the best prepared, the best trained, the most vigilant, the pluckiest, and the most determined. If we should examine the career of most men who are called lucky, we should find that their success has its roots far back in the past, and has drawn its nourishment from many a battle in the struggle for supremacy over poverty and opposition. We should probably find that the lucky man is a closer thinker than the unlucky man, that he has a finer judgment, that he has more system and order, that his brain acts more definitely and concisely, that he thinks more logically, more vigorously, and that he is more practical. Life is not a game of chance. The Creator did not put us where we would be the sport of circumstances, to be tossed about by a cruel fate, regardless of our own efforts. End of chapter 16. Chapter 17 of He Can Who Thinks He Can, by Orison Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Success with a Flaw. Just now the American people are receiving some painful lessons in practical ethics, said President Nicholas Murray Butler recently. They are having brought home to them with severe emphasis the distinction between character and reputation. Of late we have been watching reputations melt away like snow before the sun. Put bluntly, the situation which confronts the American people today is due to the lack of moral principle. Never before in the history of our country have the American people received a greater shock to their faith in human nature than during the past year, by the exposure of the diabolical methods practiced by men in high places upon an admiring and unsuspecting people. Every little while the public press throws X-rays upon the characters of men who have long stood high and spotless in the public eye, and have been looked up to as models of manhood, men of honorable achievement, revealing great ugly stains of dishonor, which, like the blood spot on Lady Macbeth's hands, all the oceans of the globe cannot wash out. A tiny flaw sometimes cuts the value of an otherwise $1,000 diamond down to $50 or less. The defect is not noticeable to the average person. It is only the fatal magnifying glass that will detect it, and yet its presence is a perpetual menace to the commercial value of the stone. A great many human diamonds, which a little while ago were thought to be flawless brilliants of the first water, and which dazzled the financial and social world, when the microscope of official scrutiny was turned upon them, were found to contain great ugly flaws. A United States Senator, 70 years of age, was recently sentenced to serve a term in prison, besides paying a fine, for his connection with great land frauds. Still another senator and several representatives have been indicted for crooked work in connection with their exalted positions. Congressmen have been convicted of land frauds and army officers of speculation. The exposure of post office contracts and the notorious cotton statistics leak, not long ago, showed that minor officials had sold themselves to manufacturers and Wall Street brokers. Think of the men at the head of great public trusts juggling with sacred funds, not only taking for themselves from the hard-earned savings of the poor salaries 2 or 3 times as great as that of the President of the United States, but also giving enormous salaries to a large number of their relatives out of these same sacred funds of those who have struggled for years to make possible a better condition for those who should survive them. Think of their paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars for secret services of suspicious nature, and using trust funds to effect stock manipulations for private gain. Was there ever before such a shameful story spread before Americans? Were people ever before so mercilessly betrayed by men they looked up to, admired, and implicitly trusted? Never before has there been such colossal stealing carried on so brazenly and openly by men in high positions. Some of these men, when they appeared in public a year ago, were applauded to the echo. Wherever they went they were followed by admiring crowds. Some months ago I saw one of them, a man who has been for many years a great public favorite, at a reception in the White House. He was pointed out by guests, and seemed to attract almost as much attention as the President himself. People seemed to regard it as a great honor to be introduced to him. Now he would hardly dare to appear before an audience for fear of being hissed. What a humiliation for those whose names have been household words for a quarter of a century or more to be asked to withdraw from trusteeships or directorships in institutions which perhaps worked for years to secure these men, on account of their great influence and high reputations. What is there left worth living for when a man has lost the finest, the most sacred thing in him, and when he has forfeited the confidence and respect of his fellow men? Is there any quality which inheres in dollars that can compensate for such a loss? Is there anything which ought to be held more precious than honor or more sacred than the esteem and confidence of friends and acquaintances? The man who has nothing which he holds dearer than money or some material advantage is not a man. The brute has not been educated out of him. The abler a man, and the more money he has, the more we despise him if he has gotten that money dishonestly, because of the tremendous contrast between what he has done and what he might have done. What the world demands of you, whatever your career, whether you make money or lose it, whether you are rich or poor, is that you be a man. It is the man that gives value to achievement. You cannot afford success with a flaw in it. You cannot afford to have people say of you, "Mr. Blank has made money, but there is a stain on it. It is smirched. It has cost him too much. He exchanged his manhood for it." Every human being has it within his power to keep the foundation under him, his manhood, absolutely secure under all circumstances. Nothing can shake that but himself. The citadel can never be taken until he himself surrenders the keys. Calumny, distraction, slander, or monetary failure cannot touch this sacred thing. Every man, whether in private or public life, should so carry himself before the world that he will show in his very face and manner that there is something within him not for sale, something so sacred that he would regard the slightest attempt to debauch it as an unpardonable insult. He should so carry himself that no one would even dare to suggest that he could be bought or bribed. Who was so corrupt during the Civil War that he would have dared to attempt to bribe Abraham Lincoln? There was something in that face that would have cowed the hardest character. Who would be bold enough to presume to bribe our present president? Many a one has failed because he was not a man before he was a merchant or a lawyer or a manufacturer, or a statesman, because character was not the dominating influence in his life. If you are not a man first, if there is not a man behind your book, behind your sermon, behind your law brief or your business transaction, if you are not larger than the money you make, the world will expose and despise your pretense and discount your success. History will cover up your memory no matter how much money you leave. That is the lesson of the startling disclosures of late. These men whose reputations have melted away so rapidly, men who have had such a drop in the public regard, were not real men to start with. There were flaws in their character foundations, and the superstructures of their achievement have fallen before the flood of public indignation. Those criminals in high places are beginning to realize that no smartness, brilliancy, genius, scheming, long-headed cunning, bluffing, or pretense can take the place of manhood or be a substitute for personal integrity. There are men in New York today whose names have been a power, who would give every dollar they have for a clean record, if they could wipe off all of their underhanded, unquestionable methods from the slate and start anew. But there is no way to buy a good name. It is above riches and beyond the price of rubies. How many men there are today in high positions who are in perpetual terror lest something should happen to expose the real facts of their lives, something which would pierce their masks and reveal them in their true light. How must a man feel who is conscious that he is walking all the time on the thin crust of a volcano, which is liable to open at any moment and swallow him? There is one thing no money or influence can buy. That is the heart's approval of a wrong deed or a questionable transaction. It will be bobbing up all along the future to remind you of your theft, of your dishonesty, or of your unfair advantage. It will take the edge off your enjoyment. It will appear, like Banquo's ghost, at every feast to which you sit down. Methinks that some men who have been exposed recently must have had strange dreams and horrid nightmares during their sleep, when the ghosts of the poor people whom they have wronged appeared to them and haunted their rest. Methinks they must have had strange visions as these dollars intended for widows and orphans slipped through their fingers for luxuries and amusements, dollars which had been wrung out of the lives of those who trusted them. What a pitiable picture those great financial giants made, under investigation in courts of inquiry, squirming, ducking, dodging, and resorting to all sorts of ingenuity to avoid telling the exact truth, to keep from uncovering their tracks or exposing their crooked methods. No man has a right to put himself in a position where he has to cover up anything or where he must be afraid of the truth. Every man should live so that he can hold up his head, look his kind in the face without wincing, and defy the world. A man went to President Roosevelt before the last presidential election and told him that someone had unearthed a letter of his which would be extremely damaging to his canvass were it made public, and that with a little diplomacy the damaging part of the letter could be suppressed. After listening to the man, the great president said, "I have never written a letter which I am afraid to have published. Let them print the letter, the whole of it. I have nothing to conceal. I am not afraid to face anything I have ever done." How many of our public men dare take that attitude? Isn't it a disgrace to this fair land that there are men in our Senate and House of Representatives, and in almost every legislature, whose votes and influence can be bought, and upon whose honor there is a price? If there is anything which a man in a responsible position ought to prize, it is the esteem of the young men who look up to him as their idol or hero. Is it strange, when our youth find their idols smashed, and their heroes betraying them, that their ideals should become blurred and twisted? Is it strange that they should ignore the old-fashioned methods of slow fortune-making when they see the smooth, oily, diplomatic schemers getting rich in a few months, and young men who were mere clerks a year ago, now riding in costly automobiles, giving expensive entertainments, and living in fine houses? Why should they not catch the spirit, and try to do the same thing themselves? You wrongdoers in high places, if you should live as long as Methuselah, should devote every minute of balance of your lives to doing good, and should give every farthing of your wealth to charity, you could not repair the damage you have done in crushing the ideals of these tens of thousands of youths who have looked up to you as their models of successful men. How can you escape responsibility for the crookedness which may be repeated in their lives when they shall come to fill these high positions which you now hold? They thought that square dealing, honesty, and integrity had been the secrets of your success, and now they see it was won by your smooth, oily, cunning dishonesty, your ability to deceive, to cover your tracks, and to live a double life. Who but yourselves will be responsible for the cracks in their characters which may come from the terrible shaking of their confidence in humanity? But, young men, don't lose your faith in humanity. Don't let your fallen idols shake your faith in your fellow man, for the great majority of people are honest. Let these terrible examples that have been recently held up to you make you all the more determined to build your own superstructure on the eternal rock of right and justice. Let the man in you stand out so boldly in every transaction that the deed or task you do, however great, will look insignificant in comparison. Get what you can and keep your own good name, not a penny more. $1 more than that would make your whole fortune valueless. If there is a pitiable sight in the world, it is that of a man with executive ability, sagacity, and foresight to make a clean fortune, yet using his energies and abilities in making a dirty one, a fortune which denounces and condemns him and is a perpetual disgrace to himself and his family. The right ought to thunder so loudly in a man's ears, no matter what the business or transaction in which he is engaged, that he cannot hear the wrong or baser suggestion. Men have two kinds of ambition, one for dollar making, the other for life making. Some turn all their ability, education, health, and energy toward the first of these, dollar making, and call the result success. Others turn them toward the second, into character, usefulness, helpfulness, life making, and the world sometimes calls them failures, but history calls them successes. No price is too great to pay for an untarnished name. The highest service you can ever render the world, the greatest thing you can ever do, is to make yourself the largest, completest, and squarest man possible. There is no other fame like that, no achievement like that. End of chapter 17. Chapter 18 of He Can Who Thinks He Can, by Orison Swett Marden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Getting Away from Poverty. Those who have the misfortune to be rich men's sons are heavily weighted in the race, says Andrew Carnegie. The vast majority of rich men's sons are unable to resist the temptations to which wealth subjects them, and they sink to unworthy lives. It is not from this class that the poor beginner has rivalry to fear. The partner's sons will never trouble you, the poor boys, much, but look out for some boys poorer, much poorer than yourselves, whose parents cannot afford to give them any schooling, do not challenge you at the post and pass you at the grandstand. Look out for the boy who has to plunge into work directly from the common school, and who begins by sweeping out the office. He is the probable dark horse that will take all the money and win all the applause. The struggle to get away from poverty has been a great man developer. Had every human being been born with a silver spoon in his mouth, had there been no necessity put upon him to work, the race would still be in its infancy. Had everybody in this country been born wealthy, ours would be one of the dark ages. The vast resources of our land would be undeveloped. The gold would still be in the mines, and our great cities would still be in the forest and the quarry. Civilization owes more to the perpetual struggle of man to get away from poverty than to anything else. We are so constituted that we make our greatest efforts and do our best work while struggling to attain that for which the heart longs. It is practically impossible for most people to make their utmost exertions without imperative necessity for it. It is the constant necessity to improve his condition that has urged man onward and developed the stamina and sterling character of the whole race. History abounds in stories of failures of men who started with wealth, and on the other hand it is illuminated with examples of those who owe everything to the spur of necessity. A glance at the history of our own country will show that the vast majority of our successful men in every field were poor boys at the start. Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, Abraham Lincoln, Horace Mann, George Peabody, Ulysses S. Grant, James A. Garfield, to mention but a few of the great names of past generations, rose to distinction from an iron environment and direst poverty. Our most useful and successful men of today have also been involved from the school of want and stern necessity. Our great merchants, railroad presidents, university presidents and professors, inventors, scientists, manufacturers, statesmen, men in every line of human activity, have for the most part been pushed forward by the goad of necessity, and led onward by the desire to make the most of themselves. A youth born and bred in the midst of luxury, who has always leaned upon others, who has never been obliged to fight his way up to his own loaf, and who has been coddled from his infancy, rarely develops great stamina or staying power. He is like the weak sapling in the forest compared with the giant oak which has fought every inch of its way up from the acorn by struggling with storms and tempests. Power is the result of force overcome. The giant is made strong in wrestling with difficulties. It is impossible for one who does not have to struggle and to fight obstacles to develop fiber or stamina. To live without trial is to die but half a man. Strength of character is a thing which must be wrung out of obstacles overcome. Life is a great gymnasium, and no man who sits in a chair and watches the parallel bars and other apparatus ever develops muscles or endurance. A father, by exercising for his son while he sits down, will never develop his muscle. The son will be a weakling until he uses the dumbbells and pulley weights himself. How many fathers try to do the exercises for their boys, while they sit on soft benches or easy chairs, watching the process? And still those fathers wonder that their boys come out of the gymnasium weak, with as soft and flabby muscles as they had when they entered. Isn't it strange that so many successful men who take pride in having made themselves, and consider it the most fortunate thing in the world that they were thrown upon their own resources, and were obliged to develop their independence and stamina and self-reliance, should work so hard to keep their children from having the same experience? Isn't it strange that they should provide crutches, so that it will be all the more difficult for them to walk alone? That they should take away the strongest possible motive for development of power by making it unnecessary for them to strive, by providing for every want and guarding them on all sides by wealth? A famous artist, who was asked if he thought a young man who was studying with him would make a great painter, replied, "No, never. He has an income of £6,000 a year." This artist knew how the great struggle against thwarting difficulties brings out power, and how hard it is to develop a strong, manly fiber in the sunshine of wealth. How many young immigrants have come to this country uneducated, ignorant of our language, friendless and penniless, and yet have risen to positions of distinction and wealth, putting to shame tens of thousands of native-born youths who possessed every advantage of wealth, education, and opportunity, but who have never been heard from. I have in mind a young man of this class who came to this country a comparatively short time ago, but who has already risen to a very important position wholly unaided. He is a remarkable example of a self-educated, self-trained, self-disciplined man, and in the persistent process of his development he has evolved a very strong, positive, aggressive character. He has brought out his latent powers and strengthened his weaker faculties. He has pruned out of his mentality and habits those things which would embarrass and hinder his progress, and has gained such a strong momentum that there seems to be scarcely any limits to what he is likely to become. His is an inspiring example of the possibilities of manhood in America, one which explodes all excuses of the poor boy and girl who think they have absolutely no chance to get up in the world. I am no advocate of the blessings of poverty, considered as a finality. Poverty is of no value except as a vantage ground for a starting point. It is only good as the apparatus in the gymnasium, to develop the man. In itself it is a curse, slavery, but it is the great thing to get away from, and it is the getting away from it, if honestly and consciously done, that calls out the man, that develops the human giant. We did not always see at the time that we got incidentally on the way up from poverty was infinitely better and more precious than the thing we were aiming for, a living, a competence, that the development of a strong man in the mighty struggle with necessity was 1,000 times more valuable than the living, the money, or the property gained. Grover Cleveland, who once was a poor clerk at a salary of $50 per year, in speaking of poverty as a developer says, "There is surely no development of mental traits, and no stimulation of the forces of true manhood so thorough and so imperiously effective as those produced by the combination of well-regulated ambition with the healthful rigors of poverty." It is the student who has to struggle hardest to obtain an education that gets the most discipline and good out of it. Boys who are born scholars, and who only need to read a lesson over to know it and to be able to pass an examination upon it, do not derive half so much from their college course as do those who have to fight hard for everything they get. It is not, as a rule, the youth who has a regular income and every want supplied by indulgent parents who make the most of his opportunities at college, but the one who has to work his way through, who has to toil in college and out to make his expenses, or else go without an education. What would the average youth do if he were not compelled by necessity to work, if he were not obliged to exert himself in order to get the thing he wants? If he already has all he wants, why should he struggle for more? Not 1 in 10,000 would go through the struggle with poverty, the wrestling with necessity, just to produce character and make himself a stronger man, but he would do it for selfish reasons, to satisfy his ambition and get that which he longs for himself and those he loves. "I am not wasting my sympathy on the children of the poor," says U.S. Senator J.P. Dolliver, once a poor boy himself. "What little sympathy I have I will give to the children of the rich. If you have $100,000 and give it to a boy to start him out in life, he doesn't start. I suggest keeping that 100,000 and that boy apart. It will be better for the boy. The cabin where Abraham Lincoln was born did not shelter the childhood of a king, but something better than a king, a man." The boy who is conscious that he has a fortune awaiting him says to himself, "What is the use of getting up early in the morning and working one's life out? I have money enough coming to me to take care of me as long as I live." So he turns over and takes another nap, while the boy who has nothing in the world but his own self to depend upon feels the spur of necessity forcing him out of bed in the morning. He knows there is no other way open for him but the way of struggle. He has nobody to lean on, nobody to help him. He knows that it is a question either of being a nobody or getting up and hustling for dear life. Thus, shrewd nature, in making man get that which he wants most by the way of necessity, brings about her great ends of civilization and character development of the race. The money, the property, the position are small things in comparison with the man she's after. What price will nature not pay for a man? She will put him through the hardest school of discipline, and train him for years in the great university of experience, in order to perfect her work. The mere money or property the man gets on the way is only incidental. Nature is after the man. She does not care a fig for the money, in comparison, but she will pay any price for a human giant. End of chapter 18. Recording by Kirk Ziegler, Ogden, Utah. VoiceOversByKirk.com. End of He Can Who Thinks He Can by Orison Swett Marden.